I'm gonna tell you a story. At first, it's gonna sound ridiculous. But the longer I talk,
We have to find the keys.
the more rational it's going to appear.
I can't believe you found coffee.
Sugar, right?
Yeah.
Hold on. 3. You like 3.
How many times have we been here? How many times?
For me, it's been an eternity.
This is not the end.
The invasion will fail. We lose everything.
This is not the end.
I die within 5 minutes of landing on that beach, along with every other soldier.
How did you do that?
Come on!
Come find me when you wake up.
You do know what's happening to me.
What happened to you happened to me. You hijacked their power.
How do I control it?
You have to die. Every day. Keep coming here and I'll train you. Again. Your leg's broken.
No, I'm good.
Then you better start over.
Oh, come on! I'm not a soldier.
Of course you're not. You're a weapon. They want to conquer the rest of the world. Unless you change the outcome.
We are not equipped for what's out there.
How many times have we been here? What are you not telling me?
It's gonna be dark in a few hours.
And curl up by the fire and open a bottle of wine. We should just reset.
Whoa!
I can't tell if there's anybody out there with those lights.
Yeah, the lights are pretty bright.
I'm going to assume it's a capacity crowd.
So if you're here for the panel, or if you're just resting your feet or getting out of the rain, thank you for coming. My name's Cebulski, and I am the kind of talent liaison, talent management coordinator at Marvel Comics. Some of you might have been to these panels before and seen me do them, but we have a different cast of creators up here today. Why don't you guys just tell your name and what you do to start?
I don't have a sign, so I don't know who I am. I'm Tom Brevoort, Marvel's executive editor. Yay!
Woo! My name is Charles Soule. I currently write She-Hulk, Thunderbolts, and Inhuman for Marvel.
I'm Jason Aaron. I write Thor and Original Sin.
I'm the other Jason. I'm Jason Latour. I write Wolverine The X-Men.
I'm Declan Shalvey. I'm the artist on Moon Knight.
So before we get rolling, I always like to take a quick poll of the audience. It's going to be harder for us to see you when you raise your hands because the lights are pretty bright. But we're assuming that you are all here to break into the comic book business, correct? Yes. All right. So the question is, how many of you are here because you want to get into comics in some kind of writing capacity? All right, so about half the room. How many of you are pencilers? Wow, very few.
Relatively few,
yeah,
yeah.
relatively few. How about any inkers or colorists? All right, a couple of you. And is there anyone who's here to just because they're interested in breaking into comics on kind of a non-creative side, on the editorial end or the legal end or the marketing end? Wow, so there's a good couple of you too. Well, I guess the panel is kind of heavy towards writers as well because there's 3 up here with 1 artist.
Well, Jason kind of is a switch hitter.
Yeah. Jason's a switch hitter. That's true. Yeah.
You don't count anymore.
You can talk about your image book. It's okay. It is a comic, and it is okay to break in that way. But yeah, this panel is really, we're here for you. And the way that we like to run these panels is to first, kind of teach by example. Let these guys tell you about their story, about how they got into the comic business, so you at least have some kind of context to see that it is possible. And it was attributed to Mark Waid, but Mark Waid once told me that it was Devin Grayson who said that breaking into comics is like breaking out of jail. And so that once someone finds one way to do it, that way is closed, and you have to find another way in. So with that in mind, let's hear about these guys and how they broke into the comic industry. Declan, why don't we start down with you, if you want to give us your story about how you came up in the comic book industry.
Sure. Well, as I'm the only international... Oh, that does not reflect anything about me. I am, as the only international guy here, I guess, I didn't really know. I always knew I wanted to do comics, but I didn't really know how I was going to, because I didn't live in America, where they were all made. Oh, can you hear me okay? Excellent. So I studied fine art, and I just learned about my craft and how to be a good artist and how to develop. After that, I didn't really know what to do, so I went to just a small UK comics convention and talked to a few artists there. One guy offered, he liked my portfolio, and he said he would pay for the publication of a comic that he wrote if I drew it. He said he couldn't offer me money, but he would get it published. Now, this may not be the best offer, but it was definitely the best offer I had. Once I did it, I had a published comic book. That comic ended up winning like the best indie book at the Eagle Awards that year, and that was kind of my first step. But from there, very slowly, once you do one project, other people will see it, and then you work on another project, and each book you work on is kind of like a portfolio for the next book after that. I ended up getting work on for Boom Studios' 28 Days Later series. At the same time, with this thing called the internet, you should look it up. I joined this group of like-minded artists. It was called Comic to Art, and I came up with the name, yes. And basically everybody was trying to do just fan drawings, but because everybody was a really good artist and wanted to push themselves, there was a certain one-upmanship element, and it ended up kind of becoming a portfolio blog. And I found that a lot of us ended up getting work from that. Mitch Gerards, who does Punisher now, Evan Shaner, who did Deadpool. A lot of us came up, and it was a time where everybody was looking at art blogs, and Twitter was starting, and there was lots of art being thrown at everybody, and I think a lot of editors saw that. But it was kind of a mix of going to American comic conventions, which wasn't cheap when you're flying over from Ireland, even going to UK conventions, because England's another country for me. So it's an awful lot of dedication, an awful lot of time, an awful lot of hard work, and and you just have to keep pushing yourself. And of course, using the internet as much as you can. It's a little handier from an artist's point of view, because you can put images up there and people see it. From a writer's point of view, I mean, you're not going to throw your script up there and go, "Wow, I love that typeface." It's a different beast. But I think the best way is to definitely try and approach things from all those levels. You can't just live on the internet. You could be the best artist in the world, but unless you can actually talk to somebody, like meeting editors, there's no substitution for actually being able to have a proper conversation with an editor. You have to try hit them on all levels. But the fact that you're even here and at this panel that's a good first step. I think that's everything.
Okay. Yeah, and feel free to ad lib in here, Tom, because
Sure.
we like to to comment on what Dex said. And I can't emphasize enough what the internet is a kind of the tool that we didn't have back in the day to break into comics. I mean, it was just
For sure.
You guys, like Declan said, have taken the first step in coming to a convention to meet us, to listen to it. But the follow-up, really, where a lot of the business happens in this day and age, is on the internet. Message boards, social media, all different places. And we can go through some of the etiquette about that after. But just pulling from what Dex said, just of the utmost importance.
So we've a late arrival.
Oh, Jordie, is that you down there?
Yeah, hi, sorry.
All right, no worries. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, sir.
There were a couple people who were interested in becoming colorists in the audience, right? You could raise your hands again. All right, so yeah.
Cool. Hi.
Do you just want to, since we'll go
Yeah, let's go down that
kick over to you, tell us a little bit about how you broke into the industry, your breaking in story, so to speak?
You got to put on your accent, though.
No accent. Which one?
This is the accent side of the
Oh.
table.
All right. Well, when I started comics, I was a young lass. No, okay. I was when I actually started comics, I didn't know that I wanted to color comics. I had actually forgotten that was even part of a comic assembly thing. And so I actually applied to Marvel and through talent management. And I didn't really make a big splash. I don't think they were super duper impressed, but they wrote back with a few critiques. And so I basically had a lot of friends from art school that were way too cool for me, like Ramon Perez, Declan Shalvey, Tom Fowler. I think that's it. A few others. Chris Somney as well, actually, for some reason, really liked me when I was like drawing stuff in college. So after that, I think I just kind of had really good relationships there, and I started just playing around with their own work, saying, hey, I'm trying to get into coloring comics. Could you like kick me to sketch? And they're like, sure. And I started posting those on Twitter. I started getting a little bit of traction there, and Gabe Hardman seemed to really like my stuff, and he had me come over to Boom to color his Planet of the Apes series. And then after that, I think Marvel saw that I had some good professional work, and they put me on one of my first books, which was a really small short story for Spider-Man. And then soon after that, I got work with Declan, just as a short fill-in. And it's just, I think what made it work was that I had the right connections, but a lot of that, I have to say, comes from Twitter and having a good blog and being friendly and being excited and eager to take new work and to, just to learn. So when I was doing that, I was on Twitter and I had the right relationships. What was the other thing I was going to say? I can't remember.
We don't know.
I know. Sorry, guys. I just got here. I'm kind of like, just having the perseverance. No, just trying to work and learn, and keeping your internet persona up there. I have to say that's a big thing I've noticed now. Even when I want to kick colorists, like to CB's way or to any editor's way, it's hard when you don't have a portfolio or when you don't have a body of work on the internet. Unfortunately, we live in a new world where technology reigns supreme. So you have to be online, and you have to have, your work up there. So that's kind of how I broke in. I got that story with Declan, and ever since, I just stayed on time, and I kept people happy, and now I'm here. So
I think that was what you just mentioned about internet, sort of the person you present on the internet is, particularly on Twitter, I think that's very important, because basically nobody wants to work with somebody who comes across as a jerk, who's negative, who's would be a grind. I mean, comics is already a lot of work, and so you want to be doing it with people that you would want to spend time with anyway. So I think that was a good point.
Sorry, I was actually at a creative conference in Ireland a few days ago, and it was all designers, advertisers, industrial illustration and whatnot. And they made a very good point, which I think really does apply to comics, is if you do have an internet presence or a website, or mainly a blog, to keep updating it with work. Because the perception of you being a working artist is, like if an editor sees your work, they see your blog and it's like a post from like 6 months ago and you've nothing since, they're either going to assume you're not working or you're not motivated. But if you're regularly publishing work, you may not even have a job, but if you're regularly updating your portfolio, they'll just assume that you are and take you a lot more seriously. I think a lot of people just kind of throw stuff up online and think that it's just going to take off, or Tumblr's going to turn them into superstars. You've got to have the appearance of being professional. That really goes a long way.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to say, have your contact email up there. Just one quick thing. If you want to break in, you're putting your work up, awesome. Next step, have your email up there. Otherwise, no one can hire you. Just saying.
Well, to that point, having an internet presence is also particularly valuable when it comes to the idea of getting used to your work not existing in a void. You need to be able to handle feedback and to be prepared to have your work exist in a place that's not just your desk. It's liberating in a way, but it's also very useful just in terms of practicality, because at some point these things you make are going to become real.
And if I can, you done, Jason? Or?
Yeah.
I love how there's energy and then the slow drawl.
One of the things I would recommend, and it got thrown out here a couple times, is the word professional and professionalism, which is very important because you are establishing a persona for yourself online. And one of the things I would highly recommend is that you use your real name, because if with Tom or I get an email from a guy who's, Raymond Lutz or something like that, that's fine. But if we get an email from Dark Elf 31 Rocks, it's really not something we're going to take very professionally. So your blog, your Twitter, your Facebook should all be in your real name because that's the persona you're putting out there. That's the person who the checks are going to go to. That's the credit we're going to put in the books. And that's the name we want to see when you're submitting your artwork. And also, you have to remember that in this day and age, and it's not just in comics, in any industry, our HR people, when we're hiring people from interns on up straight through to editors, to people in finance or marketing, we are looking at your online profile. They're checking your Facebook. They're going back in your history. They're reading your last year's worth of tweets. They are going back and looking at what you've posted on your blogs and things like that, because that is a part of who you are. That has become your resume. It is your virtual resume. And all that stuff is reviewed by companies, by human resources, no matter what you're applying for. If you're applying for an artist position or a writer position, Tom or some of the editors are going to go through and check that stuff to see what kind of person you are online. If you're applying for a professional position, it is our human resources people, the Marvel Disney organization, do go back through and check all that to make sure. So
That is scary. I did not know that.
And if you have a Tumblr and you're trying to put your work up there, I mean, that's great. And those hilarious cat gifs, as cute as they are, probably aren't going to make you seem like the most professional person. So just be aware of that stuff.
you can do that after you get hired like me.
CB, I did have a question. So what if your name actually is Dark Elf 31 Rocks? What do you do then? It's a tough spot, right?
Pen name.
He clearly already knows who he is.
CB, can I just ask again on that email? When I got out of college, a lot of the things were, a lot of college students were applying to these things, but with their school email, like at ringling.edu, I have to say, I don't know if CB will agree, but I thought I was better than all those kids because I got a Gmail account ASAP, and when I was applying to people, I was not using a school email. Because when you respond with a school email to anything, it immediately makes you look less professional, makes you look like a student. It makes it look like you don't have your own system for
Your own
yourself.
identity, yeah.
Yes, would you agree, Ian?
I would agree. And the other thing is that a lot of the Marvel account, the program that we use in Outlook, it autofills pretty much. So I'll type in, D, Shalvey or J Bellaire, and it'll automatically fill in the rest. And if it's your old email address, when you graduate school, and someone's like, oh, you know what, I really like their work, let me try to contact them. Maybe it'll autofill into your own address. You might not get that email because it's at your old address. Use an email that you always know is going to be there on the Gmail or Hotmail or Yahoo or your own blog or server that you've put up to for your portfolio. Very good point. So, Jason, you want to go next?
Sure. This is actually a very difficult thing for me to answer because my route was pretty circuitous.
How did you get here, Jason?
Yeah.
What brought you here today?
Where do you think you are?
These are things I wrestle with every morning. My route was pretty circuitous. I think it's probably best for the purposes of the panel if I focus on how I got to where I am, what I'm working on now. And that is I broke in as an artist first, and that was a long, drawn-out process. It was not that dissimilar from the things that Declan described. But because I was an artist, I had relationships with other artists. I made an effort because I knew I wanted to write and do of producing as an artist. So I continued to attend conventions and foster relationships with people. I think that's a thing that's really overlooked in terms of creating comics. One, once you do get paid to make comics, you're going to have to collaborate with people. Two, the best way to show what you can do is to make a comic. But a lot of people often ask me, how do you find an artist? How do you find a person that would be willing to collaborate with you? They assume that that artists that are impenetrable in terms of approaching them. And the answer to that is that you have to make it a human relationship. You have to find people who are like-minded. And the only way to do that is to actually attend conventions and make an effort to meet people. It helped, in my case, that I actually had some way to demonstrate that I had a facility with drawing, so other artists took me seriously. But the next step was to actually write the comics, because a lot of people approach artists and say, I have a great idea for a series, and they don't actually do the work. They don't actually write the stories. So I just continued while I was working for hire on various projects as an artist. I took my time, my free time, and the money that I was making in my day job, so to speak, and funneled it back into my writing career. I facilitated the creation of my own comic book. And then once that was a literal object, I was able to like send that around to editors, give it to my friends that worked in the industry, and those relationships, which are very real. It's not networking in a way where you have to, where it's all about like just who's in your Rolodex. It's about actually being able to talk to fellow artists and creators, and becoming part of the actual community of creating comics. And I think that is actually what opened the doors for me more than anything. I always felt confident that it was my talent, and that I was talented enough to do this. But when I was a kid, I thought that talent was going to be such a blazing example of, virtuosity that like nobody would be able to deny it. And that's what everybody.
And that's what happened, right?
Yeah, basically. And it is a pretty hard lesson that it's not. Most of the time, even if you are like super talented, if you just take a look around the room, there's just as many people that are as talented as you are. And you have no idea how many talented people are sitting in the room that have never done their first comic yet. So, yeah, I guess that's probably a rambly kind of answer, but I think creating my own book on the side and investing in the relationships that helped to form that book were actually what kind of got me through the door into actually getting paid and making a living at it.
I think one thing to remember is if you're doing good work, people will want to work with you. If you're making your own stuff and people see it and like it, they'll want to work with you. I did a short story with Jason last year, and do you want to do a short story with Jason? I've read Scalped, and I loved Scalped, so my answer was yes. I didn't know what he was like to work with. Horrible, by the way. But at the same time, I knew his work, and I knew the type of work that he did, and I wanted to work with him. And the only way people can do that is if you are producing, which is really the most important thing at the end of the day.
Well, and also, we talk to each other.
Yeah.
I got one of my first drawing gigs because the artist that was drawing the book I wrote turned it down. Mm-hmm. And he told the editor, like, look, I would love to have drawn this comic, but I don't have time because I'm working on my own book. However, a friend of mine who is very talented is available. And that's how I got my first story drawn for Marvel. Those relationships, they're real relationships. Like, people want their friends to succeed. They want talented people to succeed. I think people want good comics, and they want to foster that in any way possible. Because we, at the end of the day, sitting up here as creators, want to feel good about the people we're sitting beside, and we want to know that they're invested in it in the same way that we are.
I think that's a very good point about this business, is that I've found that to be true over and over again. Like, people, you want your friends to do well, and it's like more fun if you can hang out at a show like this and everybody's got great projects to talk about, everybody's doing well. And so, you throw your buddies, work when you can, and you talk people up, and you read their books, and I don't know that other creative industries are necessarily like that, but comics certainly is, which is a great thing about it.
Yeah, it feeds back into your own creativity when other people are doing good work.
Yeah, and we also the opposite. We know the guys who think they can be better at us, and they're jealous of what you guys do, and they sit there and kvetch and say, I can do it better, but they're not out there putting out the work and putting their money where their mouth is, So if you're keeping track at home, I guess that breaking into comics 101, 1, use the internet, online presence. 2, be professional. 3,
Charles is taking notes.
develop relationships, because it's often not what you know, it's who you know. And 4 is, to borrow the line from our new sister company, do or do not. There is no try. It's true. It's, be productive. You have
I
to
like
really,
that.
You like that? All right,
I'm a
thank
Star
you.
Wars fan, though,
Yep,
so I
good.
liked it.
A friend of mine once told me, he said, it's not who you know, it's who you drink with. He was right.
I hope that's me. All right, Jason, do you want to tell us a little bit about your breaking in story?
Yeah, my first comic gig was as a Marvel Talent Search Contest winner, which is something Marvel had never done before and hasn't done since. So, sorry, that's really no help to you, I guess. I kind of ruined that for everybody.
It's the breaking into jail thing. You did
Yes.
it. Now that door's closed.
I mean, it was kind of, I got lucky, I guess, that this was my first published comic gig, first comic script I'd ever written. It was an 8-page story, an issue of Wolverine. And at the time, I thought, well, this is it. Like, my foot's in the door. Next stop, comic book superstardom. It didn't exactly work out that way. But I started pitching everything I could to Marvel. So I was pitching Punisher stories and Daredevil and everything. But I think I'm a good example of showing, even though my first published work was at Marvel, I didn't really break into comics at Marvel. I was pitching stuff to Axel a lot at the time. But it took me going off and doing my own stories. I went and did some books at Vertigo. We did a book called The Other Side, which is by far the lowest selling book I've ever done, but the one I worked the hardest on and the most important one, and then it got me the next job. And then those Vertigo books, I sent copies of those back to Marvel. And then Axel called me one day and asked me to write a Wolverine story. So even though my first gig was at Marvel, it took me going somewhere else and doing other stories for them to hire me to write, anything substantial at Marvel.
I think it was it's Scotty Young. We did one of these panels. You guys know Scotty Young's work. He did Oz, and now he's going to be doing Rocket Raccoon. He was the one who said that it's breaking into comics is rather easy. It's staying into comics that is difficult, because you really are only as good as your last page. Because, look around you, look at the people next to you, look at the people up here. Technically, if you think about it, you're trying to take their jobs, because you're trying to break into comics,
This panel's over.
So, there's only enough. Marvel only publishes a certain number of books every month. Are trying to take your job. It's the life process of the comic book industry. How many of us years ago, you look back, what be the next writer on, Wolverine, or on, Fantastic Four, or on Captain America.
Jason Aaron has actually been 3 different people under that beard.
Sure. Yeah.
So Charles, you want to tell us a little bit about your story?
Absolutely. So I broke in, or sort of the inspiration to get into comics was partially because I was working as an attorney. I still am working as an attorney, unfortunately, and I really, really wanted to continue doing creative work. I'd been a musician for a long, long time, and I had always liked writing, and I just really wanted to figure out a way that I could keep writing, so that law wouldn't consume my life. And I ended up finding I've always been a comic reader, comic fan, just like I'm sure everyone in this room, and I had found a community of great sort of aspiring creators online on a website called Jinx World Now. It's I think he does some Marvel too. Brian Michael Bendis. Yeah, he does some Marvel stuff. Anyway, it was incredibly active with a lot of people many of whom have come out and done some things in the industry. Nick Spencer was on it at the time. Joss Fialkov was on it. It was just a very fertile community for people, and there were a lot of aspiring writers and artists and so on, and it all kind of, was a way for us to try to slave labor graphics, which is a cool, weird indie comics company. And then you just network your way up, sort of leverage project to project, and eventually was fortunate enough to get asked to do a couple fill-ins on a series called Thunderbolts for Marvel, which turned into the ongoing gig for that, and then a bunch of other things. So that part of it is really not I mean that's a comparable story to I think a lot of these guys. You kind of you just work very hard, you're persistent, you stay in. But I think one of the things that one of the themes that we've all heard is community, right? Like the community of comics is very, very important at every level. So wherever you are, if you're just starting out, or if you're up at this level, like you have to be able to rely on the other creators around you, and you also need to be thinking about how you access the next level of creators or editors or whatever it is. Is this a good time for the networking?
Yeah, sure.
No? All right, cool.
Please, I love this story.
So I got it. I sort of came up with an analogy for the way I think you should network, right? So what I was doing initially was what I would call hunting, right? So I would see CB at a convention. I would make a beeline for him and be like, hey, CB, remember me? I'm Charles Soule. I'm so great. We should do some work together, blah, 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 CB, CB, CB. And CB would be like, hey, man, what? Yeah, cool. And I would, you would do that with, or I would do that with, anybody I thought could advance my career, no matter how far up the ladder they were from me. That didn't necessarily work that well, right? Because nobody wants to be harangued. You can't really access 10 rungs up the ladder. You can access maybe 1 or 2 rungs up the ladder from where you are, right? So the new strategy I came up with, which ended up being much more effective, is basically fishing, right? So you don't pressure anybody. You basically throw a lot of lines out in the water, and then you see what bites come back, and then you pursue those, right? You make it so it's their decision to contact you instead of your decision to sort of force yourself on them. So it's basically, I think fishing is a better approach than hunting when you're networking. Don't reach for the stars necessarily. Don't bug Tom too much unless he comes to you, right? But if you're going for people kind of just a little ways above you, whether they're other creators or other, people, editors, whatever it might be, that can be extremely productive. And over time, that really, really pays dividends, because all those people, the level or two, at your level or 2 above, they're all rising at the same time. So before you know it, when you're up high, you have some of the best guys in the business who have known you for years and want to support you and want to help you. And it's really...
I might be talking to my friend, and then somebody goes, "Hey, do you want to see my portfolio? It's great. I love your work." It's your first instinct is to recoil and go, "Help!" And if you just have a nice, polite conversation, ask nicely if they'd look at your work, it's the best way to go. But I think that's a great analogy.
I just think a little bit of empathy goes a long way. I mean, I think you should be empathetic for the fact that the people that are the gatekeepers are being hit on constantly.
You disagree, but that's my sense of it,
No, I agree. And, one of the things you do have to remember is, Tom is the executive editor, has a large number of books and a staff that works under him that also carry their own books. And their main responsibility, day in and day out, is to make sure that come Friday, those books that they were producing go to the printer. And then the finding and hiring of writers comes, or new writers and artists comes almost secondary to that,
Well, it comes in the service of that.
Yep.
The job isn't finding and hiring new writers and artists per se. The job is well, and part of what allows us to do that is finding new writers and artists. So it's part of the process, but it's not the be-all and end-all of the process.
Yep. And if we were taking down notes, on that Comics 101, I guess 5 would be, go fishing, not hunting. And 6, I just want to go back to something else you said, Charles, was start small, which is very important. Because if you come in and you pitch, hey, I got this great arc for Amazing Spider-Man, Dan Slott is writing Amazing Spider-Man.
I know that sounds very obvious, but in terms of like breaking in, it relates in the sense that because those spaces are limited and your first opportunity is probably going to be a short story, you want to be pretty good at writing a short story so that they actually pay attention to your short story. The longer form stuff you'll figure out like as you go, but ultimately like being good at the basics, the building blocks of what you do, it's just like playing a sport. It's like if your fundamentals are taken care of and you understand like the basic construction of how to do a thing in a small compacted form, you're going to be much more natural at improvising, at thinking on your, or it's the same thing, isn't it? Improvising and thinking on your feet. But
also coming up with stuff on the fly.
Yeah, exactly.
That's another thing.
I don't have any good.
I want to disagree slightly, or I want to amend one of the things that you said, CB,
go ahead.
because I think it's almost old thinking today.
Correct.
I can't think of the last time somebody showed up at Marvel, and I think the same is true of a DC, but I don't know that certainly, who walked in the door with just a cold pitch for something, and that became a project.
Oh, yeah, I'm not, was it?
Yeah.
Please, thank you for clarifying. I wasn't
What more typically happens is, people are out there producing their work, whether it's the web comic that they do online, whether it's the sample pages and things that they're showing on DeviantArt, whether it's smaller press stuff or indie press stuff that you do, whatever that is. And at a certain point, editors become aware of that. They meet you at a show, or they see your work online, or you've sent them a link and they've happened to check it out, and there's something in the work that speaks to them. Then typically, to be written. And, the editor in question goes, I just read this stuff that Charles Soule was doing. Maybe he'd be a good guy to do this. I'll reach out and see if he wants to do that. Almost rather and more effective than, putting together opuses for the Marvel characters. It's good to have all that stuff once you're in. Of the people at Marvel in a position to hire you.
Yeah, without a doubt. I was thinking along the lines of something like, too, if you're going to be targeting editors and you want to submit some of your work, I was talking about this to someone earlier.
Nick Lowe.
I was just going to
212-555.
Know who you're submitting to, because Nick Lowe,
Send it
for
all
an
to
example, edits books that are sometimes anthologies, like A+X or AVX. They're looking for stories of a smaller nature where they're looking to try out a couple people. If you go back and look at that series, you'll see some names of people who got their first Marvel work in those books, Acker and Blacker, and James Asmus back in the day on a smaller anthology, and some guys who have come up through those ranks. So,
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, is if you're going to go chasing after editors, make sure you do your homework first.
Yeah.
When I was first pitching to Marvel, I was doing what CB was talking about before. I was pitching to pretty much everybody I could get a hold of, pitching for any book that was available, and that got me nowhere. So I started looking at the books that I like to read and looking at the kind of stuff I thought I wanted to write, and then looked at what editors fit those sensibilities. So I looked at Will Dennis at Vertigo, was a guy who edited books like 100 Bullets and Why the Last Man, books that I really liked. So I could guess that looking at the stuff he did, he and I probably had pretty close sensibilities. So I I targeted him and sent my stuff to him, and was, he turned me down 2 or 3 times, but I was persistent, and eventually, he's the reason I have a comic book career. And then I did the same thing with Axel at Marvel. I could tell that this is a guy, who did a bunch of Vertigo stuff I like. I really like all the Marvel stuff he does. I'm going to go after that guy. So, it's not a coincidence that but look at all the editors in comics. Those were the 2 guys that I picked, and I wind up having a career based off those 2 guys. But just because I did that homework.
You don't really want to be pitching, a Max comic to whoever's editing the Marvel Adventures line, for example. And sometimes you find that if you look at all the books you're enjoying and you look who the editor is, sometimes you'd be surprised how much of a crossover there is, because a lot of the editors do have a voice on the books that they edit. There's a certain thing that they like, and that might speak to you. If you were reading, Captain Marvel and Hawkeye and Spider-Man, and you find out that Stephen Walker was in charge of a lot of those books, well, then maybe that's the type of person you should be approaching. It goes across all the line. You should just investigate the stuff that you really like.
Another point, if you're wondering how you find out what editor is on a book, you open the front of the book. In the credits, they're listed. And I know that seems silly, but it's that's how you find it.
That actually sort of points out my favorite barometer as to whether somebody's ready to work in the industry is when they come to me and I say, "Oh, send me your stuff up to the office," and they say, "Where's the address?" If you can't figure out where the address is that we print in every comic that we put, you are not ready to do this professionally. Do the most basic homework that you've got. Know where the people are.
So learn how to read.
Yes, learn how to read. That is a good one.
Yes.
But and maybe part of that, like we're talking about figuring out what editors to pitch to, part of that is kind of figuring out who you are and the kind of stuff that you want to do.
I'm still trying to figure that out.
Right. Well,
I don't know where I am either.
I think just finding if you're writers or artists or whatever, just kind of figuring out what is your style, what are your influences, story-wise, what kind of stuff do you want to do, what's the story that you're dying to tell, instead of just being somebody who says, well, I'll write or draw anything just to get that job. You got to kind of figure out who you are as a creator, and then go after the people you think can help make that happen.
Yeah. So Tom, do you want to talk a little bit about your career and how you came up on the editorial side of things?
Yeah, my history is going to be absolutely valueless to anybody in this room because it all happened so long ago. So back in the days in between grading fire and running from the dinosaurs, back before there was an internet or anything, I had an interest in comics and I wanted to work in the field, and I was an illustration major at the University of Delaware, and in the initial orientation where the head of the department sort of walked all the students through the various year syllabus. Well, the first 2 years you do your foundation course, and then you specialize in the 3rd year and you go into illustration or fine arts or this or that. And then in your 4th year, you were expected to do an internship somehow related to some aspect of your studies, and you could do this, and we've had people do this and do this, and we even had one dude who interned at Marvel, and I thought, okay, I can do that in 3 years. So 3 years later, I sent letters of inquiry out to Marvel in DC about the internship program, and I got a response back from Marvel, and I still haven't heard from DC. And every
Keep that
day,
dream alive.
Every day I go back after working, back to my mailbox with hope in my heart that today, but I'm sure it's waiting for me now when I get back home after the show.
Are you okay with moving to Burbank?
I feel good. It feels good to me.
You got to fill out that creator survey first.
So I went in. It was a college internship. It was non-paying, 5 days a week, non-paying, which meant that I worked on the weekends at a fast food job to have enough money to manage that. I had relatives that lived in the area, so I was able to get a free living situation for those 3 months. And I came in and I was an intern, and I interned for 3 offices at once. And I was a pretty good intern. I was about the best there is. Ever since then, they put me in positions where I could be crummy and crummy and crummier, hoping that they would get rid of me, and it hasn't quite happened yet. Maybe the next time.
Well, you're not going to leave until you get that letter from DC, right?
Well,
Absolutely not.
It's there, Charles.
Yes.
I know it. I feel it. Today's the day.
Speaking of crummy jobs, I mean, we've all had to get by while working on our craft.
Yeah.
You know, I delivered coal for like 7 years, flatting comics on the side, working on a portfolio. I mean, Charles was an attorney, clearly. We've all had to do something.
But no picnic.
I
He's
took
a
courses to
singing
become a
intern.
life insurance saleswoman. Yeah, I nearly was going to sell life insurance to these guys instead. Really close.
I worked in a warehouse full of adult novelty items, we'll say.
I was a petroleum transfer engineer, which means I pumped gas.
Nice. I used to hide along the side of the road and rob people.
I thought you were going to end that differently.
No, I drove a truck for a little while, like delivering electrical contracting stuff, and then I worked in advertising for a little bit as a like an assistant art director, kind of like like just a gopher kind of job.
But you'd like work on your comics on the side, right?
Yeah.
You know, like slowly over time. I mean,
Yeah.
how long? Like I'm like probably 10 years since I started drawing comics.
I didn't get my first published comic until, well, I got my first published comic when I did a comic strip all through college. That doesn't really count, I don't think. I mean, I feel like it counts, but to
Counts,
other
man.
people,
That's one in your draft. Yeah,
That's
that
work.
counts.
to other people, I don't think a lot of times it doesn't count, but to me it counted, and I did that pretty consistently. I only really quit it because I felt like I was being like trapped in amber with it. But I only got paid to draw a comic if I was 30 years old the first time I got paid to draw a comic.
So how long was the I mean, I'm sure everybody is similar. Like, how long was it from when you decided you wanted to do comics in a real professional way to when you actually?
Well, almost 10 years, but like I did an image series and I didn't really make any money off of that at the time, and but that led to people offering me jobs as a colorist. So I actually worked as a colorist for a few years.
So from decision to your first comics-related check.
Oh God, 6 or 7 years.
Yeah, mine was 5 years, and that first check was I think $121, but it was still a check. So.
But I mean, I decided I was actually like I would take my portfolio around. I think this is a very important thing in terms of feedback, in terms of like learning. Like I said earlier, like I was very convinced at a young age that I was going to be the next like Marvel superstar. I remember like as a kid, one of the first, I was lucky enough to have a comics convention in my backyard. It was Heroes Con in Charlotte, and so I started showing my work to other artists around the age of like 13. I would go and show people pages. I started doing pages when I was that young, and I would go to other artists and have every artist in the room break down my work and tear it apart. And that was good in terms of like it taught me to not be so precious about what I was doing. I mean, and it also helped me become like analytical about my own work. There was a lot of things that I didn't understand about storytelling or about even the process of making a comic that I learned just from doing it wrong and having somebody give me feedback about it. So I really would encourage people to take advantage of the resources around you when you're at a convention. Like, sure, I may not always give you the best feedback, you may not even like my work, but something I'm going to say is going to give you a guidepost that you can either like bounce off or run away from or whatever, but it's better than like just having your stuff exist in a void.
Yeah, you're so lucky to have that resource available to you. I had nothing. Like, I lived in Ireland. There was nothing there. I'd say after I finished college in 2003, it took me about 4 years maybe to be paid for it. How long took you, Jordie?
4 months.
Well, that's why it's hard for me to answer the question, because I started wanting to do it.
Well, I do just want to say I went to art school and I wanted to work in comics. I got out, didn't think I could, but I'll tell you it's a really great motivator. Poverty. Poverty will really push you to the limits.
Yeah.
When you have nothing in your fridge but cream cheese, you will work hard and you will wait till somebody snags you up, which is exactly what I did.
And to that point, like, the first job that I got paid to draw was a Vertigo graphic novel, and I only got off my butt to like go in there and try and get the job because I was broke. I was in a place where I was coloring comics on the side under a pen name in order to like get over my own sort of insecurities about like having my work out into the world. And I lived in New York. I lived in New York for 2 years.
There you go.
Ignored.
Alex Ross.
Oh, it was Rex Justice was the name of
Which was your porn name,
Yeah,
too,
exactly.
right?
Which was in your warehouse.
That's right. Your early work sold
right.
really well.
Rex Justice, Hammer of God.
But I lived in I moved and lived in New York City for the experience of it, but also because I knew that like people that make comics live in New York.
That's where I went to.
Yeah. For the moment, half of them.
Yeah, they did at the time anyway. Yeah. Now it's a lot more. You can live anywhere you want to with the internet or whatever. But like the experience of poverty it really lit a fire under me. And I'm not saying that that's the right decision for everybody because everybody has their own set of circumstances. But in my particular case, like. It really took the world getting real on me for me to get real about what I wanted to do.
I do want to add, though, it did take me only 4 months to start coloring comics, but now I think I'm in my 3rd year this May coloring comics, and I'm actually getting my first written story published this summer. And I only asked for that, and I was really lucky that my first story got picked up with Dark Horse Presents. And it's really, really small. It's just a stone, but that stone is going to help me build a bridge that maybe I'll write for Marvel someday. But, I haven't actually even said this to CB because I am waiting until I have collected work, and that is also about fishing, not hunting.
Yeah.
And don't forget I said anything, by the way, guys. Wait like a year or two before I come back.
But
And then
also,
just to-
that's been of the connections you've made over the
Exactly.
past 3 years.
And I think the only reason I also got that story was because I did good work for Dark Horse, and I was consistent, and I was on time, and I was friendly and professional. Professional, there's that word again.
Yep.
And when I said, hey, I have this thing, they were like, sure, let me see it, and it happened from there, so.
Building on what Tom said real quick, we got about 5 minutes left, so I just want to take a couple of questions. But Marvel does still offer internships. If you are interested, I know a couple of you've raised your hand, you're interested in more of the managerial or editorial side of things. They are paid internships. You have to live in New York. Now they are, exactly. Labor laws, woo, fun. But yeah, there are paid internships, and if you go to DisneyJobs.com, all our internships are listed on the website at DisneyJobs.com. And then, yeah, we got time. We got about 5 minutes for a couple of questions. We wanted to put it out to the audience. All right, one question here.
What if you have like an idea for a reboot of a character that's like really old that probably not a lot of people know?
If it's Hawkeye, you're too late.
We never, pretty much we never just buy an idea like that, particularly if it's an idea for, an older character, an older thing. If you became a creator who had a track record, who'd worked for us or who'd worked elsewhere and came in with that idea, I have an idea to do a new version of Dr. Druid, and here's my great idea, I would, we would be more likely to take that seriously and to...
I put Dr. Druid in She-Hulk. He's not,
There you go.
he's referenced, he's not,
There you
no
go.
spoilers. Anyway.
But as somebody I have this idea that I'd like to see done, or I'd like to sell to you, or I'd like to have you do. We just don't. We have enough ideas of our own. Why I'm drowning in commandy pitches. We have more than sufficient with the people that we've got. We're always interested in new ideas and new takes on older ideas. But those tend to be from creators who have proven themselves somewhere.
You know what, though? If you have an idea that you feel strongly about, there's no reason you can't adapt it slightly and make it not a Marvel character. Make your own character, make your own story, and make it amazing. That's the way you get up here, basically, is with your own characters, really.
Yeah, doing your sort of bootleg version of an Elegia comic is only going to create legal problems and not going to help you break in.
So another question? All right, go ahead.
So you were talking about not sending, so if we've done a book ourselves, self-published a book, or have something we're doing, not sending it as a pitch, but can we still send those to you as examples, or should you have already?
Yes,
Yes.
that's your resume. Please, you
Yes.
should definitely send it in. The address is in the book, and then you should definitely target the specific editors that you think have the similar sensibilities to you. Dear Tom Brevoort, dear Nick Lowe, dear Jake Thomas. Don't do a dear editor letter. There's nothing worse than a dear editor, here's my work kind of thing. Really be specific about who you're sending it to.
And it's really bad, or really funny. We find it really funny when you send us the letter that says, dear editor, I have always wanted to work for DC Comics. Here is a sample of my work.
He's not
Okay.
Did you find you have something in common with them, Tom?
when you do send it, send a cover letter. Keep it brief. Give all the deets. Make sure you have your contact information there. Again, there's nothing worse than having a bunch of samples or things from somebody and not being able to contact them. There's only so hard I'm going to work at that because there are a lot of other people who want to do the job as well, and I have to really, really love whatever these samples are to go to the effort to track your ass down because you didn't put an email address or physical address or phone number on your samples.
And cover letters do sometimes get separated from samples, so if you're sending in a portfolio of work, put contact information every single page, or if you're sending in printed work, make sure your contact information is on the cover of the book or on the inside front cover of the book. Staple a business card in it if you have to. All right, We've got time for one more question, then we got to wrap this up. Okay. Yep, go ahead.
Yeah.
Yep.
Do you guys mind getting samples here at cons?
No.
Not stitches, but just books?
It's better to talk to us here, to make the introduction and ask if we want them. Baggage fees are pretty expensive, and our bags fill up rather quickly, to be completely honest with you. So it's better to show us the book, and then Tom and I can give you our business cards or our addresses, and you can send it. What I always like to tell people is the purpose of the con, when you're coming to a con, is to, one, get information like you're all doing here, and two, is to make contact, not necessarily get to work. It's important to exchange business cards or at least get a face to a name, so when you follow up with us, dear Mr. Brevoort, dear Mr. Cebulski, I met you at Eccc. We talked about this. Come so remind us, that way you have the in at least, so we remember. There's a context to our conversation, and that's what you should ultimately be striving for any convention you go to. It's not to put your book in someone's hand, or it's not to leave with work. It's to just make that face-to-face conversation, so you are able to establish contact for future reference.
I love free stuff. I hate carrying free stuff to the airport.
All right, well, look, guys, I'm sorry we got to wrap this up, but you guys just want to do a quick shout-out where they could find you online, be it on Twitter or on your website, so they can follow up if they need be, or, follow you guys and get some more advice in the future?
At Jordie, Twitter. Yeah. WHOA. That's the correct way to spell woe, everyone, just so you know.
Right.
Thank you.
Declan Shalvey on Twitter, or just type Declan into Google. Or Declan Comics. There's nobody else doing it.
You're the only Declan on the internet. I'm not the only Jason on the internet. Jason Latour.
Just look at Jason, and then Jason Aaron will call him and tell him.
Yeah, exactly. It's Jason Latour
I'll
on
take
Twitter.
messages for Jason Latour.
You've already taken everything else from me.
Not yet. Not yet.
You still got that fancy hat. You're fine.
Yeah, I'm Jason Aaron on Twitter, and you can find me out in Artist Alley. I forget where we're at. Jade something.
Yeah. J for
I'm Charles Soule on Twitter, and then I'm at V12 here. So hope to see you later.
All right. I'm Tom Brevoort on Twitter. I also have the Marvel Age of Comics Tumblr and the Brevoort Formspring Tumblr, so I'm pretty easy to find.
And I'm CB Cebulski on Twitter. And Tom and I are both up in Artist Alley at DD01.
DD1.
Yep. If you want to stop by and ask for more questions, we're going to be reviewing portfolios tomorrow and Sunday as well. All right. So, hey, thanks, guys. Really appreciate you coming. Good luck. And
Yeah, hey, cool, man. No problem. No problem at all.
Who are you?
Star-Lord.
Who?
Well, Star-Lord, man. The legendary outlaw. Forget it.
We arrested these five on Xandar. Check out the rap sheets.
Drax, aka the Destroyer. Since his wife and family were killed, he's been on a rampage across the galaxy in his search for vengeance. Gamora, soldier, assassin, wanted on over a dozen counts of murder. Rocket, wanted on over 50 charges of vehicular theft and escape from lockup.
What the hell?
Groot, he's been traveling recently as Rocket's personal houseplant / muscle.
Peter Jason Quill. He's also known as Star-Lord.
Who calls him that?
Himself, mostly. He's wanted largely on charges of minor assault, public intoxication, and fraud.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know how this machine worked. Hey, that's mine. You son of a... Hey, take those headphones off right now!